My name is Mike Kelly. I'm the head of the Archives and Special Collections here on the A level of Frost Library at Amherst College. We are home to vast stores of material about college history. Most people know that we are the home of about half of the known Emily Dickinson manuscripts, and what I'm talking about today is another great collection of another great poet, and that is the manuscript collection of Richard Wilbur. Richard Wilbur first started giving material to the college back in the late 1960s and has been steadily depositing manuscripts here for upwards of 40 years now. And very recently we signed an official agreement that his manuscripts that are on deposit will be gifted to the college. And so we're very excited because that just confirms that we will be the single most important resource for the study of Richard Wilbur's life and work from here on out. One of the really wonderful things about this collection that makes it a very important resource is that it is so complete. We have everything from juvenilia to original drafts of manuscripts, very rough drafts, to nearly finished drafts. We have correspondence. We have an absurdly complete collection of his published works, including copies of nearly every book that he has a dust jacket blurb on. So that's not books that are by him, but just books where he blurbed the dust jacket. So it really is a complete resource. You can see the contracts he signed with publishers. You can see the letters he had back and forth with illustrators and with collaborators. And Wilbur's own status as a poet is simply unquestionable. I mean, he's won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry twice. He was the Poet Laureate of the United States. This is not someone who will be forgotten. This is a poet that people will continue to come back and study. And it's wonderful that the place that they will go is Amherst. This is the place. So one of the interesting items in this collection is a children's magazine called Under the Chinaberry Tree, which includes what is probably Wilbur's first published, at least his first published illustration. And that's an aspect of Wilbur's work that I was not familiar with before I started working here. I mean, everyone had heard of him as a poet, but the collection is very rich in his cartoon work. And he's a really competent cartoonist, and some of it is very amusing. You get a real strong sense of his sense of humor when you just look at some of these drawings. The contracts, really having publishers' contracts is... Again, not every poet saves every scrap of paper like this, so we're very fortunate to have that material for the kind of insight that it gives you into the very, the business of being a poet. Letters to and from Leonard Bernstein are very interesting, especially seeing letters to, this great American composer that are addressed Dear Lenny. So you get this real personal sense of their collaborative work. We have several limited edition things that are often a collaboration between the poet and the artist and the book designer, and this fits in really nicely with a lot of the artist books that we have in the collection. We have a lot of fine press books, a lot of small press books, and there's a wide range of that material. And he also, he believed early on that he wanted to be a newspaper man, and so we have other examples of his early work, such as this is a newsletter from 1933 when he must have been in middle school or grammar school. Just a simple mimeographed article. And this is an homage to Robert Frost with poetry by Richard Wilbur and prints by Charles Wadsworth. So it's a limited edition, very fine printing, and we not only have several copies of the finished work, but we also have sort of the artist mock-up that includes proofs of the proofs of the illustrations and also just simple typescript of the poetry pasted in. So this sort of publisher's dummy documents the production of this work. Wilbur engaged in frequent collaborations with other artists, working with Bernstein on Candide, and here's an example of working with a visual artist. This is a bestiary, which he did with, it's compiled by Richard Wilbur. It includes one of his poems and illustrations by Alexander Calder. And this is just a perfect example of a sort of high culture, mid-50s fine press book that is full of, just these lovely Calder illustrations and then Wilbur's selections from the poetry of the ages. There's his own piece in here, Beasts, which he signed R.W. But I think this is a nice example of Wilbur as a literary scholar, that he is extremely well read and has a vast knowledge of poetry. He's done scholarly editions of Edgar Allan Poe. He's very well versed in Dickinson and Dickinson scholarship, and he really knows the craft, that he knows the history of poetry as a working craftsman, and so he brings that to his own work, but also to his editorial work. That strong sense of the literary history is simply invaluable. These little notes that Richard Wilbur prepared for many of the items that he deposited here are really a unique and truly invaluable resource for future scholars. For instance, on this rough draft of altitudes, the names Giudici and Kissinger are penciled up at the top right corner, and that's the kind of thing that scholars could puzzle over for decades. But fortunately, Wilbur has explained exactly what those names are and why they appear on this manuscript. He tells a little story about writing this, and that's what, if we just compiled all of these little notes into a little scholarly work, that would be something of an autobiography. So an autobiography told through the manuscripts themselves. So that's a voice that you rarely get. Future scholars will be so happy that they can open a folder, and inside that folder will be a note from Richard Wilbur that says, "This is my very first draft of Altitudes." And that's something that, we sure wish Emily Dickinson had done that for us. So we're very grateful to Wilbur for taking the time to do that.